I want to take a minute and go over the survey flow for the 2026 PQS, specifically the Training Participants Survey. The intention is that the survey will be used, will be duplicated and then used for the mid-year, and then the separate copy will be used for the spring. Um, so we start at the top where we load in a number of variables, the embedded data variables that we derive from a partner's enrollment document. We then, in order to understand what's happening the next step, I want to just come down and show you the overall structure. So we set a bunch of variables, and we'll talk about those in a sec. And then we have separate survey flows for if the survey type is TIIC, and we go through questions and some flow elements, and then we end the survey. If it's assessment, if it's curriculum, we end the survey. And every survey will be one of these three survey types presently. So every survey will end by the time it gets to the bottom of this branch. The at the end of each of these, so at the end of the TIIC, right, we go through a bunch of questions. We'll come back and look at the specifics there. At the end, we commit some embedded data variables, which we then, through workflows, save to the directory, and so then save to the profile of the survey taker. So that is if FY26 midyear complete is not equal to yes, right, which it isn't the first time that they take this, then we are going to save the responses for all of these different questions to embedded data variables that have the question ID underscore response as the naming protocol for those variables. And what that does is it means that in a system where folks who take the mid-year survey may not have to answer all of the questions on the spring survey, right? That's true if the partner organization elects to split their survey. It means they're going to have a shorter survey for individuals that take both the mid-year and the spring, right? So if that's true, if they have taken the mid-year and then they come back and they take the spring, we have a flag that says they have taken the spring, and we have captured their responses to all of the questions that they will not answer on that spring survey. And then we've captured them in embedded data variables. And that way we can display them on the dashboard by mapping the embedded data variables to the dashboard. So when we go back up to the top, we can see why that's important. So at the top, we have a branch. If they did complete the mid-year, right, and the only way to have this set as yes is to have gone through this process once before, where this is not equal to yes, and to have all of those variables saved. So if they've done that and they're coming back, then presumably it's spring, and they've taken the mid-year and completed it. And if that's the case, then we're going to load all of their responses. Set it from the panel, from the directory. Okay, so then when we get into each survey type, then what we're doing is we're looking at the timing, and we're looking at whether or not it's a split survey within those timing buckets, and we're setting and then we're telling the survey which questions to take. How are we doing that? We're doing that by, I haven't made any changes. We're doing that because every question has a display logic that has the question block. If the question block, if an embedded data variable named after the question block contains the question number that is shown here after the underscore, then we display this question. Every question on the survey has that same logic. So when we look at the flow, we are going in and we're setting based upon um, first the timing, then whether or not it's a split survey. And then there are some other pieces that they're also answering during enrollment, um, which say the different tools that the program is using, OLE, POCA, different areas that we want to ask questions about. And so we are then assigning which questions to ask by taking those embedded data variables that are named after the question block and making sure they contain the number for that question. And so here is the list of questions that are going to be asked on the mid-year survey, on the mid-year TIIC survey, if it is a split survey. And then if on the mid-year TIIC survey, if it is not a split survey, then we have a different profile of questions that will be asked, right? More questions, they'll ask all of them. And so that's the logic that sits at the top, right? If it's mid-year, if it's split, if it's not, if the timing contains spring, and then if it's split and if it's not, and not only if it's split and the individual uh, completed the mid-year, then they get the shorter spring survey. If it's split and the individual did not complete the mid-year, then they still get the full survey. And then we display the question blocks for every survey item beneath that before we commit responses for those questions that would only be asked in the mid-year to memory, and then commit them to the directory, and then close out the survey. So the only other thing to note is that for the TIIC survey, there are three different survey taker statuses that are determined in survey. One of the first questions asks them, have you been assigned one or more teachers to coach or teachers to mentor? And they can say, yes, I have, in either a one-on-one or a PLC setting, or they can say, I haven't been assigned them. I've only participated in trainings, or they can say, I haven't participated in this program at all. And so, if they are a current coach or mentor, then um, then there are uh, then they're going to we're going to share questions with them that we wouldn't share to others. And I can see here actually that this needs to be moved, right? So we set up a logic gate that says if when we ask you if you've provided coaching or mentoring, you say yes in a one-to-one setting, or you say yes in a PLC setting, then we're going to show you all those questions that are for current coaches and mentors. And that includes these. So let's move these down there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so all of these questions here are for current coaches and mentors. And then we have a couple of questions that are intended for everyone. And then we have a couple of questions that are, again, intended for current coaches and mentors. Questions for everyone. And so we're just the only like, I don't know how to say this, but once we get to the question block, the only display logic that we're applying on this end is related to whether or not they've participated, the extent to which they've participated in the program. And that is how our survey is organized on the survey flow. I guess worth noting is that when we look at the assessment or the curriculum surveys, everything is the same. The structure is exactly the same for assigning which questions are displayed, but there is no in question logic. If they respond that they did not participate, then it ends the survey for them. And that's the end.